What's going on, everyone? Kellen Rec here, and today I want to go over something that I think you'll find pretty cool. Check this out. Have a look at this.
What? Hey, slow down. What?
So that's a video I made with Jackie Bradley Jr. recently, and we wanted to do something to spice up his Instagram, give it a cool looping feature. You may have seen tricks like this with Zach King or Ari Fararooy and some of these awesome loops. So today I want to show you exactly how we did it, what the shots were, what the breakdown was, and what the editing tricks were to make the perfect loop for this video. Check it out. So if we go into After Effects here, you're going to see the composition breakdown of what I actually built. Here's the full project. Now, it looks a little bit complex. You can see a whole bunch of different layers here. But really, it's just 2 or 3 shots that are cut and masked to create the final look. So let's break this down nice and easy. First, we've got one shot of Jackie Bradley Jr. riding in on his scooter. Now you can see if we scrub along here, he rides in casually. We have a stand-in here interacting, and he rides right on by past the pillar. Now, remember here, the camera is sitting on a tripod, so it's standing perfectly still, no movement at all. We also had cloud cover, so there were no real shadows that would have gotten in the way of the ground, because the shadows can change up things and make it a lot trickier. So that was really nice. There's a second shot here where it's just Jackie Bradley Jr. riding by again, a slightly different variation. Didn't need to have this shot, I just wanted to have 2 different versions of him cruising by, so that's why we have 2 different shots there. Finally, we've got a shot of him yelling at himself. So this time, we have him walk in where the stand-in walked, and we had people walking by, so we just need to reset. And you can see he just casually walks in, yells at himself where he would have walked, and continues on. Now there's a few things in the shots here that make this work so well. Number 1, we're on a tripod, so there's no movement in the composition of our shot. Number 2, you'll see the framing that we have here. You can see that when he scooters on from off screen, he goes back behind this pillar here, which makes for easy masking to get him off the screen. You'll also see when he walks in on this side in this shot to yell at himself, he doesn't really cross that line that we're going to be masking behind. So he stops right there in front, which is nice. Now we do have 2 variations of him coming out and yelling. One, he throws his arms up, and one earlier on, he just kind of speaks. But we use both of these in the video to spice it up, make it a little more entertaining. So what do we do at this point? Well, the first thing that I like to do is make a large comp where there's no movement, no artificial camera movement, because if you saw in the final video, we have an artificial camera movement. Well, the first thing I do is build a full comp here where I can do all of my masks. So what you'll see in this full comp is everything is masked out as we'd expect. I'm just going to lower this so we can play it back. And you see this in the full video. See, we've got multiple versions of him. All the masks are happening. But what you'll see without the artificial camera movement is that I didn't actually hold out the shots of him yelling for long enough, so he's just going to cut off frame. That's where we need to bring in our camera movements to make things work. So look at this. He's walking on screen, and if you don't have the camera movement, he just poof disappears, just like that, and the shot keeps going. So that's why we need our artificial camera movement, and we will get to that. But if we look at a full shot breakdown, what do we have here? Well, we're just dealing with masks. So our first shot here, we've got a mask that goes right along the edge here of this line so that he can still go behind it. And if we get rid of that, that's all you're seeing there for that one shot. The mask does slightly move to account for some shadows on the ground as he walks, but again, not too many shadows because of the cloud cover. Our next shot that we've got underneath is, my apologies, just a moving mask here with Jackie Bradley Jr. in the background. So obviously we've got the shot of him yelling over the top here, but behind it we've got this shot, which is masking along as he goes. And finally we've got a shot below it, which is the outside shot. And you can see this one by itself is underneath, so it's just a full shot with no masking. And then we mask once another Jackie Bradley Jr. appears behind, if that makes sense. So we've got a full frame, followed by the mask that he appears behind. So you can see that it's just really a looping motion where we're slowly adding one behind the other, adding one behind the other, and on top we've got him coming in to yell at himself. And this is, again, just a pretty easy mask. He's able to yell at himself, they never cross paths, and you just have a nice mask there. Now, some of the keys to this particular shot is that we want to have a smooth loop. Well, because of the way that he steps in a frame and steps off, this part on the right here wasn't ever going to be able to loop. I had to make it disappear, and we used the camera to make that happen. You can see there's another version of him over here where he puts his hands up. He cuts on and off here as well. So the left side here, we were able to make loop because we have him coming from off-screen left to off-screen right. So we can do the full loop. So basically I had to make sure that the first frame of him here was the same as our last frame here. And you can see that's exactly what happened. So anytime you're doing a loop, you need to make sure the first frame you're using is exactly the same as your last frame. And what I'll usually do is, if we have our first frame starting here, I just duplicate this clip, bring it behind our last frame, and drag it out so that the beginning is there, which is exactly what I did here. It might be a little confusing to explain, but really the key is making sure your last frame is the same as your first, so when it plays back on Instagram or Twitter, it's seamlessly looping back around. So once you have everything masked out, and I know this is a quick overview, but I want you to just understand what is going on here. It's all just masks and layering of clips. Once you have this all masked out, I bring it into a new composition. So I bring this entire thing, the yelling at himself comp, into a new composition that I call final. And this, I frame the size that I'm going to want for the internet. So in this case, I did a composition that was 1800 by 1500. So it was a little bit more square for Instagram. And then all I'm doing is using a position and scale keyframe to make an artificial camera. I'm also using a blur, but we'll get to that in a moment. So you can see, as we ride along, you can see that we're actually keyframing. So we're just having the camera go from left to right. It's punching in on the scale when certain things happen. It pulls back when other things happen. So what I had to do here, because we know that he's going to disappear in a minute, I had to make sure that we quickly panned left so that we got him off frame when he disappears. You see what's actually happening in the frame. This can help you cover up shadows and bad masks too. We swing back right when we know he's going to appear again and throw his hands up. And then we swing back to our initial keyframe where the initial action was starting, so we get that seamless loop. Because remember, we had the looping motion, but now we need our artificial camera to loop as well. So you can see that that happens, and it just starts fresh again on the loop. Now, how do I do that fresh loop? I need to make sure that my keyframes that start this for my position and scale are the same that end it. Now, there is one trick that I use on the position that makes this all work really well. If you hold down Option and click on the little stopwatch here for position, I do something that is called a wiggle animation, or a wiggle notation here. So I type wiggle, parentheses 2, 30, end parentheses, and I get that little subtle motion that looks like it's kind of a handheld camera that's bobbing up and down. If you don't do that, you're not going to get that realistic camera, artificial camera feel. So that's exactly what I do. I have the wiggle, I have position and scale animated as well on various keyframes. I'm punching in, I'm pulling out, I'm panning, tilting, all of that. And then what I do is I make sure that I add a little Gaussian blur. So every time that I'm going in, doing a little punch in as if you're using a real camera and zooming in, snap zoom, I kick it out of focus a little with the Gaussian blur. So I jump, in this case, from 0 to 25. You can see it up here in my effects control. Right here, the Gaussian blur, and then I have it come back to focus. So it looks like you're zooming in, losing focus a little, and then pulling it back. And I do that a couple times just for subtlety, makes it feel a little bit more natural. So you can see that's exactly what we're doing here. We're just adding an artificial camera, adding blurs, making it look real. And again, for this artificial camera look, there are a few keys, as I've said. You want to have that blurriness, you want to have that wiggle, you want to make sure everything is scaled with a nice ease to make it look smooth when you're moving around, and you want to have that loop perfectly. I mean, you don't have to have the loop, but it adds such a nice touch when the beginning and ends can fit, kind of gives you that whoa factor in your post. Now, finally, what I'll do is I'll make sure that I have motion blur toggled here on the sequence and up here so that it's enabled, and that gives all of the camera movement a little bit of motion blur, makes it, again, feel more natural. So that's exactly how I did this video. I've got a few more of these that I might do in upcoming videos if you like this sort of behind the scenes look, but I'm hoping that it gives you a sense of how exactly this type of video is created. Again, it's a lot of masks, a lot of layering, and a lot of just sitting there using your time to crank out an edit. Really not that hard to do. It was only 2-3 shots that I actually used to produce this, but it came out pretty cool. So thanks for checking it out. If you want to see the real posts, go on Instagram. You can see it on my page. You can see it on Jackie Bradley Jr.'s page. Check it out, give it a like, and we'll check you back in the next one. If you enjoyed the video, please go ahead and subscribe. It means a lot. Thanks again. We'll check you back.